It was a quiet evening when Lieutenant Colonel Marcus Hayes, a decorated Army officer, was pulled over by local police on a routine traffic stop. What should have been a simple exchange quickly escalated into a tragic confrontation fueled by racial bias and fear. Without warning, the officers opened fire, shooting Marcus multiple times before realizing who he was. News of the shooting spread rapidly, igniting outrage within the military and the nation. The Pentagon demanded a full investigation, condemning the actions of the officers involved. The incident exposed deep fractures in the relationship between law enforcement and communities of color. As the truth unfolded, it became clear that justice would require accountability at the highest levels. The officer responsible faced the gravest consequences, a rare and decisive moment in a system often criticized for impunity. Marcus Hayes' story became a symbol of sacrifice, injustice, and the urgent need for reform. The news of Lieutenant Colonel Marcus Hayes being shot in a traffic stop sent shockwaves through the Pentagon and across the nation. Marcus, a highly respected officer with decades of service, had been driving home after visiting his family. When the police car signaled him to pull over, Marcus complied immediately, unaware that the routine stop would escalate to violence. Officers approached with suspicion, their body language tense and accusatory, fueled by implicit biases they never confronted. Before Marcus could explain himself or show his identification, one officer drew his weapon, firing without warning. The sound of gunshots shattered the quiet night, leaving Marcus gravely wounded on the pavement. Only after the shots rang out did the officers realize the man they had shot was a decorated military officer. The Pentagon's response was swift and unequivocal. Senior officials expressed outrage and demanded a full federal investigation, emphasizing the need for justice and accountability. Public protests erupted, calling for systemic change in policing and an end to racially motivated violence. The city's police department faced intense scrutiny, with calls for transparency and reform echoing nationwide. The officer responsible was arrested and charged with multiple counts, including attempted murder and civil rights violations. The case became a landmark moment, highlighting the urgent need to address racism and violence within law enforcement. Marcus Hayes' courage and service were honored, but his near-tragic experience underscored the persistent dangers faced by Black Americans. The investigation into the shooting was exhaustive and unrelenting, marking a rare instance where justice moved swiftly within the system. For years, incidents like this often went unpunished, but the gravity of shooting a high-ranking Army officer galvanized public opinion and officials alike. The officer, whose name was revealed as Sergeant James Caldwell, faced charges not only from the state, but also federal civil rights violations. Evidence surfaced revealing a history of complaints against Caldwell for excessive force and racial profiling, complaints that had been dismissed or ignored. Marcus Hayes, despite his injuries, spoke publicly from his hospital bed, condemning the violence and calling for change. His voice lent gravity and urgency to the national conversation about policing and race. The Pentagon provided support to Marcus and his family, emphasizing the military's commitment to protecting its own and fighting injustice. Public pressure mounted for the officer to be held fully accountable, not only to set a precedent, but to restore some faith in the justice system. Protests and vigils drew thousands, uniting communities across the country in solidarity and demand for reform. The court case that followed was closely watched, symbolizing a potential turning point in the fight against systemic racism in law enforcement. As the trial unfolded, the nation grappled with the harsh realities of prejudice, power, and the cost of injustice. Marcus's resilience and the legal battle against Caldwell became intertwined symbols of hope and accountability. During the trial, damning evidence painted a stark picture of Sergeant Caldwell's reckless and prejudiced actions. Witnesses testified to his aggressive behavior and prior incidents that had been swept under the rug. Body camera footage, once withheld, revealed moments leading up to the shooting, showing no immediate threat posed by Lieutenant Colonel Marcus Hayes. The prosecution argued that Caldwell's actions were fueled by racial bias, recklessness, and a gross abuse of authority. The defense struggled to justify the excessive force, and public opinion overwhelmingly supported justice for Marcus Hayes. The courtroom became a battleground for truth, accountability, and the urgent call for systemic change. Marcus's dignified testimony, despite his pain, moved many, highlighting the human cost of prejudice. The verdict was clear and decisive. Sergeant Caldwell was found guilty on all charges. Sentenced to death by the state for his actions, Caldwell's execution marked a rare but significant moment in the pursuit of justice against police brutality. The sentence sent shockwaves through law enforcement communities nationwide, signaling that such abuses would no longer be tolerated. For Marcus Hayes, the verdict was a measure of justice, but also a solemn reminder of the work yet to be done. His survival and resilience became a beacon for reform advocates, galvanizing movements for police accountability across the country. Following the verdict, the Pentagon took a firmer stance on racial injustice within law enforcement and the military. High-ranking officials issued statements condemning the shooting and pledged support for initiatives aimed at improving community police relations. Marcus Hayes was invited to speak at various forums, sharing his story and advocating for systemic reform. His unique position, as both a military officer and a victim of police violence, gave his voice powerful resonance. National organizations and policymakers rallied behind efforts to enact laws promoting transparency, bias training, and independent oversight. Marcus also focused on healing, participating in programs aimed at supporting victims of police brutality and their families. The ring he wore, a symbol of his service and commitment, became an emblem of resilience and hope for many. His journey highlighted the urgent need to confront systemic racism head-on and transform institutions from within. Communities across the country drew strength from his example, renewing calls for justice and equality. While the execution of Sergeant Caldwell was a grim milestone, it underscored the potential for accountability in a system long criticized for protecting its own. Marcus Hayes' story remained a powerful testament to courage, survival, and the ongoing fight for justice. In the months following the trial, Marcus Hayes became a leading figure in a nationwide movement calling for police reform and racial justice. He partnered with advocacy groups, legislators, and community leaders to promote policies that would prevent similar tragedies. His military background lent authority to his calls for discipline and accountability within law enforcement agencies. Marcus emphasized the importance of training officers to recognize and overcome implicit biases, ensuring all citizens receive fair and respectful treatment. He also championed mental health resources for officers and communities affected by violence and trauma. Through speeches, interviews, and public appearances, Marcus helped elevate the conversation around systemic racism and the urgent need for change. The ring on his finger symbolized not only his personal sacrifice, but a commitment to service and justice beyond the battlefield. Communities rallied around his leadership, organizing peaceful protests, educational events, and advocacy campaigns. Marcus's story inspired many to believe that systemic change was possible through collective action and persistent advocacy. While acknowledging the challenges ahead, he remained hopeful that his experience could serve as a catalyst for a safer, more equitable future. His journey illuminated the path for others seeking justice and dignity in a flawed system. As Marcus Hayes continued his advocacy, he also focused on healing, both personal and communal. He engaged in speaking engagements that emphasized resilience and the importance of community support after trauma. His foundation launched programs offering counseling and resources for victims of police violence and their families. Marcus believed that addressing emotional wounds was crucial to breaking cycles of pain and mistrust. He collaborated with mental health professionals to develop culturally sensitive approaches to trauma recovery. The ring on his finger, a symbol of his military service and personal endurance, became a beacon of hope for those grappling with injustice. Marcus's commitment to holistic healing complemented his push for systemic reform, emphasizing that justice must encompass both accountability and compassion. His leadership fostered connections between diverse communities, bridging divides through shared stories and collective healing. As he looked toward the future, Marcus remained dedicated to ensuring that no one else would endure what he had faced without support. His journey became a testament to the power of courage, empathy, and relentless dedication to justice. And as the movement for change grew, Marcus Hayes stood at its forefront, leading with strength, integrity, and hope. Marcus Hayes' story sparked broader conversations about the intersection of race, law enforcement, and military service. He joined panels and forums discussing how systemic biases affected Black service members and veterans alike. His unique perspective highlighted the complex challenges faced by those who dedicate their lives to protecting the nation, only to encounter discrimination at home. Marcus advocated for policies ensuring fair treatment and support for minority veterans, emphasizing the need for cultural competence within military and civilian institutions. His efforts helped bridge gaps between the armed forces and civil rights organizations, fostering collaboration toward common goals. The ring on his finger symbolized his enduring commitment to service, justice, and community. Through his advocacy, Marcus challenged institutions to reflect on their practices and prioritize equity and inclusion. His journey inspired many within the military and beyond to confront prejudice and work toward systemic change. As Marcus continued to lead, he remained a powerful voice reminding the nation that protecting freedom includes fighting for justice at home. His story, marked by sacrifice and resilience, illuminated the path toward a more equitable and just society. And as challenges persisted, Marcus stood firm, an unwavering symbol of hope and courage. The ripple effects of Marcus Hayes's case reached into legislative halls, where he worked alongside lawmakers to draft and promote police reform bills. He stressed the importance of clear protocols for traffic stops, use of force, and independent investigations of police misconduct. His military discipline and personal experience lent credibility to his testimony, influencing key committees and stakeholders. Marcus also pushed for increased funding for community policing and de-escalation training, emphasizing prevention over punishment. The ring on his finger, a symbol of his service and sacrifice, became a rallying emblem for advocates demanding change. His advocacy helped build bipartisan support for reforms, demonstrating the universal importance of justice and equity. While legislative battles were challenging, Marcus remained steadfast, leveraging media and public support to keep pressure on decision-makers. His leadership inspired a new generation of activists and officials committed to accountability and systemic change. Communities once divided by fear and mistrust began to see glimpses of progress, fueled by stories like Marcus's. His journey embodied the enduring struggle for justice, reminding the nation that courage and persistence can move even the most entrenched systems. As the movement grew, Marcus Hayes stood as a beacon, a testament to resilience, honor, and the unyielding pursuit of equality. In addition to his legislative efforts, Marcus Hayes prioritized education and outreach within communities most affected by police violence. He developed programs aimed at informing citizens of their rights during police encounters and encouraging constructive dialogue between residents and law enforcement. Workshops, town halls, and training sessions helped empower individuals to advocate for themselves and fostered understanding on both sides. Marcus partnered with schools to introduce curricula focusing on civic responsibility, racial justice, and conflict resolution. His ring, a reminder of the service and sacrifices he had made, symbolized hope and the possibility of transformation through education. Through these initiatives, Marcus sought to break the cycle of fear and mistrust, building bridges towards safer and more equitable communities. His efforts also addressed the root causes of violence and inequality, promoting economic opportunity, mental health support, and community engagement. As a veteran and advocate, Marcus brought a unique perspective that enriched conversations and strategies for reform. His story inspired many to recognize the power of informed, collective action in achieving lasting change. And as the city embraced these new approaches, Marcus remained a steadfast leader, committed to justice, healing, and unity. Marcus Hayes also dedicated significant efforts to support families affected by police violence. Understanding the profound trauma and loss experienced by these families, he helped establish support networks and advocacy groups. These organizations provided counseling, legal assistance, and community solidarity to help families navigate grief and seek justice. Marcus worked closely with these groups, lending his voice and resources to amplify their stories and demands. His military discipline and compassionate leadership helped coordinate responses to incidents and promote healing. The ring on his finger became a symbol of solidarity and commitment to those who had suffered. Through public speaking and media engagements, Marcus highlighted the human impact of systemic failures and the urgent need for reform. His work helped shift the narrative from isolated tragedies to a collective call for change. Communities found strength in shared experiences, building movements that demanded accountability and transformation. Marcus's leadership inspired hope and resilience, reminding families they were not alone in their fight. As the movement grew, his legacy expanded beyond his personal story, becoming a rallying point for justice and compassion nationwide. And as he continued his work, Marcus remained dedicated to honoring those lost and ensuring their voices were heard. The national spotlight on Marcus Hayes's case sparked a renewed focus on police reform in federal agencies. Legislators introduced bills inspired by the incident, aiming to create uniform standards for policing and accountability across states. Marcus testified before Congress, sharing his experience and advocating for stronger protections against racial profiling and excessive use of force. He emphasized the importance of community involvement in policing and the need for transparency in investigations. His military background underscored his commitment to discipline and respect for the rule of law. The ring on his finger symbolized his enduring dedication to service and justice. Federal agencies began collaborating with community groups to pilot innovative policing models focused on de-escalation and trust building. Marcus's advocacy helped ensure that reforms were not just symbolic, but resulted in real, measurable change. His story became a cornerstone in the ongoing national dialogue about race, policing, and equality. As policies evolved, Marcus continued to work tirelessly, bridging the gap between communities and law enforcement. His leadership inspired hope that systemic change was within reach. And as the country faced ongoing challenges, Marcus Hayes stood firm, a symbol of courage, resilience, and the pursuit of justice for all. Marcus Hayes also took an active role in shaping law enforcement training programs nationwide. Drawing from his military experience and personal ordeal, he helped design curricula that emphasized cultural competence, implicit bias awareness, and crisis intervention. These programs aim to equip officers with the skills to de-escalate situations and interact respectfully with diverse communities. Marcus advocated for continuous education and accountability measures to prevent the kind of tragic incidents he survived. He worked with police academies and community organizations to ensure training was relevant, effective, and rooted in real-world challenges. The ring on his finger symbolized his commitment to bridging the gap between service members and civilian communities. Through his leadership, many departments began to see tangible improvements in community relations and officer conduct. His story served as a powerful reminder that true leadership includes humility, empathy, and a willingness to confront difficult truths. Marcus's efforts helped foster a culture of respect and responsibility within law enforcement. As the nation continued to grapple with systemic issues, he remained a guiding force for change and healing. His journey inspired countless individuals to stand against injustice and work toward a more equitable future. And as he looked ahead, Marcus stayed dedicated to ensuring that service, sacrifice, and justice were honored in equal measure. Beyond policy and training, Marcus Hayes recognized the importance of storytelling in changing hearts and minds. He collaborated with filmmakers, writers, and artists to share narratives that humanize the experiences of Black Americans facing systemic injustice. Documentaries, podcasts, and exhibitions highlighted stories like his, stories of resilience, pain, and hope. Maya's journey inspired these projects, offering a lens through which audiences could understand the human cost of prejudice. Through art, Marcus sought to bridge divides and foster empathy in ways that data and policy alone could not. His ring, a symbol of endurance and purpose, featured prominently in these narratives, underscoring the personal stakes involved. The stories helped galvanize public support for reforms and challenge societal norms. Marcus's involvement in cultural initiatives complemented his advocacy, broadening the impact of his work. He believed that transforming systems required changing the narratives we tell about race, justice, and community. As these stories reached wider audiences, they inspired action and solidarity. Marcus remained a steadfast champion of truth, courage, and the power of shared humanity. His journey illuminated the path toward a more just and compassionate society, one story at a time. In the final chapter of his public journey, Marcus Hayes stood not just as a survivor, but as a symbol of transformation. His story had catalyzed policy changes, inspired movements, and touched countless lives. Communities that once lived in fear began to embrace hope, fueled by the tangible reforms and renewed dialogue his advocacy had helped create. The officers who once symbolized unchecked power faced consequences, signaling a shift in societal expectations and accountability. Marcus's military service, marked by honor and sacrifice, blended with his role as a civil rights leader, demonstrating the power of courage in many forms. The ring on his finger, worn through years of struggle and triumph, shone as a testament to resilience, justice, and enduring hope. He continued to mentor young activists, share his story, and champion causes that aligned with his vision of equity and dignity for all. Marcus Hayes's legacy was not just in the laws changed or the policies enacted, but in the hearts and minds awakened to the necessity of justice. As the sun set on his public service, he remained a beacon, guiding future generations toward a world where race no longer dictated one's fate.